Hi, this is Chris Impellitteri.
Hello, this is Rob Rock,
And you're listening to
Sonic Perspective.
Hello everyone, Rodrigo Altaf here, and welcome to another feature of Sonic Perspectives. This time we bring you not one, but two members of the band Impellitteri, Chris Impellitteri and Rob Rock. The band released a new album called Nature of the Beast on October 12th, which had a great review from our collaborator Austin Cox, and will hit the road soon. So without further ado, I'll give you Mr. Chris Impellitteri. Chris, how are you today, man?
Oh, Rodrigo, I'm doing very well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great talking to you. And you have a new album coming out soon, Nature of the Beast, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, it's coming out October 12th.
Yeah, what can you tell us about the writing and recording of this album?
Well, I mean, the writing really happened immediately after we finished the Venom tour. You know, we played some dates overseas with like bands like Iron Maiden and Slayer. We're doing like the big festivals. And we came back with a lot of energy. I mean, we had so many people come to see us. I think the last show we actually did was a headlining show in Busan, South Korea. We did like 90,000 people. So we were really energetic, really stoked to get back in the studio and write. And, you know, the writing process, I guess, is like every record we do. You know, as human beings, naturally, we progress with age. We get more mature. I like to think we get better. That's really for the listener to be subjective. But, you know, I mean, so every record, we've learned new things, new tricks, new ways to play, more music theory, something. And so that's part of the evolution. And so we went in, you know, to write this record. We were very much focused on a continuation of our previous record, Venom. You know, a lot of fast speed metal, but also some mid-tempo stuff, crazy guitar solos, kind of like Vivaldi influence, you know, classical stuff. Singing, same thing, push, you know, as human beings, we try to push our limits. We always try to explore to see if we can push or challenge our human limitations.
Yeah, and what first caught my attention, it's funny you say that you went straight from the Venom tour into recording, because it seems very much like a natural progression from your previous album.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I think so. I mean, I mean, listen, obviously, I mean, the way we write music, nothing really changed. I mean, I pretty much write the music, then Rob writes all the vocals and lyrics, and then James, and on this one, John Deddy. I mean, everybody has equal input, so they'll come in with their parts, you know, and it's really the same way we did Venom. So very smooth. It's just such a great positive energy when we did this record.
Yeah, well, you went into all kinds of different styles in your career, like more of a funk rock kind of approach on Grin and Bear It, flirting a bit with thrash metal on Pedal to the Metal, but at the same time you kept a kind of identity to your sound, which is not an easy thing to achieve, right?
Yeah, you know, I think identity really comes from the fact that, you know, look, as human beings, we use the instruments to express ourselves, musically speaking, right? So, I mean, I think a certain way, I feel a certain way, and so no matter what I do, you know, on my guitar, I'm always going to sound like me. Now, I mean, I've certainly been criticized over the years for being like, you know, people call me an Yngwie clone or, you know, some stupid stuff, but it's just not true, you know? It's like, I listen to everybody. Believe me, everybody's had some sort of influence or effect on me. That's natural, part of being human, right? But for me personally, you know, I play my guitar all day long. I mean, I have guitars everywhere, outside of my pool, my house, downstairs, upstairs, in my studios. So I'm playing guitar all day long, always playing guitar. And, you know, naturally, really cool things happen. You know, I don't know what it is. I mean, I have this, maybe it's a gift. I don't know what it is, but it gives me ability to hear things in my head and then kind of transfer my thoughts or what I hear in my mind through the instrument.
Well, and you have two very distinguished covers this time, Phantom of the Opera and Symptom of the Universe, which for me are highlights of the album. What made you pick those two in particular?
Well, so let's start with Symptom of the Universe. I mean, what people don't know, I mean, everybody knows that I'm a big nut for like Vivaldi, and I love guitar players like Paco de Lucia and Al Di Meola and John McLaughlin, you know, for technique. But what people don't realize, maybe I should speak about it more, is Tony Iommi is one of my biggest influences, especially for like writing riffs and setting the tone for a record, you know? I mean, I just think he's one of the greatest. So, you know, since I was a kid, I've always loved him. And, you know, when you think about Black Sabbath, it's interesting. If I were to ask you, with Ozzy, not Dio, which I love too, but with the Ozzy era, what are the first couple songs that come to mind when you think about Black Sabbath?
Well, Iron Man, War Pigs. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you notice most of the time, Symptoms of the Universe is not even on the tip of your tongue.
It's not.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yet it's one of the greatest metal riffs ever. It's based on a diminished scale. So I've always fooled around with that riff. I always loved it. I always wanted to redo it. And so we started playing around with it. And, we started playing as a band together with it. And all of a sudden these new parts came to us, and all of a sudden these crazy guitar solos came to me. It's almost like Vivaldi playing over, Tony's riffing. And I don't know, something just very unique. There was just this really incredible energy. And we played it, and we all looked at each other, and we started smiling and laughing, saying, oh, we got to record this. So we recorded it. And then we listened back and went, oh, yeah, we played it for some friends and some industry people, and they're like, this is incredible. You've got to put this on the record. So Symptom made it. That's how it ended up on the record. And then if I were to look at Phantom of the Opera, now that is a song in the United States. That's part of pop culture. It's a very, very famous Broadway musical.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, everybody knows about it, from children to old people. And it was one of those songs where as a kid I always wanted to do a shred speed metal version of that song. However, we almost didn't do it because it's been done with other bands. Like one band I really love is Nightwish. And Tarja and Marco, great, great vocals on that performance. But it's very basic. There's no guitar solos, the drumming, it's kind of like straight ahead, very simplified rock, but with awesome vocal performances over it. Well, we wanted to take it to the extreme musically. And then once we, excelled musically, then we wanted to push Rob to see, hey, can you not only do the male voice, but the female voice as well, which means you're going to go from tenor to like soprano and alto. I mean, it's going to be crazy. So we started playing around with the idea, and the same thing the way Symptom evolved. All of a sudden I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I just played this guitar solo. Just came out of, this really cool stuff. And it started having kind of like this haunting theme to it, which it naturally does, anyways, naturally.
Yeah.
And, we did the same thing. We recorded the song. We listened back. We were smiling as a band going, oh, yeah, this is fun, but let's see what other people think. Played it for some people, and they loved it. And so here we go. So out of 12 songs, you got 2 covers on the record, which is something we've never really done. In essence, I feel like we did what Van Halen did to the Kinks. Like You Really Got Me is by the Kinks, but Van Halen made it kind of famous in the 80s or whatever. And, we kind of did the same thing to this.
Well, you made it your own, for sure. I mean, it's funny. I never thought anyone could take a song like Phantom of the Opera and make it even more over the top, right?
I hear you, yeah.
Yeah. And
I mean, it's surprising. We're getting a lot of positive reviews on that. I mean, I've been doing interviews for about 2 weeks now. And, you never know. I mean, look, when I'm talking to you and other people, a lot of times you're going to be polite to me on the phone, right? You're not going to, try to be offensive. And I'm totally cool. I mean, I don't expect everybody to love everything we do. It's totally cool to hate us. I'm totally okay with that. There's times where I hate me, So having said that, but most of the stuff I'm reading and most of the critics that I've talked to, that's 2 of their favorite songs on the record, which is just crazy. I mean, that's quite a compliment.
Yeah. I mean, that one is one of the favorites of mine for sure, but I think it will be a hard one to duplicate live, don't you think?
Nope. No, actually, it's going to be pretty easy for us to do live.
Yeah?
Because it's pretty much kind of a live performance anyways, yeah. Yeah, it's not as hard as you think. For us, it's pretty natural.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, man, because, I hope you guys play it on the tour for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And, when you look at the lyrics of this album, there's a common theme in a few songs, like on Do You Think I'm Mad, Run For Your Life, and Kill the Beast. Would you say there's a link between these songs and the covers you included as well? I mean, Phantom of the Opera, for sure, I can see that. The beast inside and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, this record is to be an adventure. It's like going to see a scary movie. It's fun, So with us, like if you listen to things like Do You Think I'm Mad? Yeah. That's really about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Right? And so, and if people have never seen the movie, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, you've got one guy who's a normal human being who turns into a monster.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so, it's kind of similar theme to Phantom of the Opera. Run For Your Life. Run For Your Life is actually more about, we wrote that during the time that, I think it was when Trump was really, there was a lot of political banter between President Trump and Kim over in North Korea. And Kim in North Korea actually finally got ballistic missiles where they're long range where they could reach the United States. So the song came to fruition, basically thinking about, oh my God, what happens if this ever did happen? nuclear war, and bombs are, missiles are flying everywhere. Run for your life, and the bombs are like the beast, so.
One thing I noticed is how the guitar on the chorus of "Do You Think I'm Mad" fits with the riff of "Symptom of the Universe." Have you noticed that?
I didn't even think about that, but I could see that.
Yeah, it's it fits a little bit. Yeah, but on the video for "Run for Your Life," you're once again using the blood splatter Charvel guitar, which looks really cool. Did you use it to record the album as well, or not?
Oh, yes. That is one of the greatest guitars I've ever had. It doesn't leave me. I mean, I play it live now all the time. Yeah, it's that. As a matter of fact, that guitar is probably on 90% of the new record. Which most people think that's just image. No, as a matter of fact, I got that guitar a couple years ago. A friend of mine, he's the artist relations rep for Charvel, Jackson Guitars, and Eddie Van Halen's line EVH. And he kept calling me. He kept calling and said, "You got to come down and play this guitar." And it was crazy because the story behind it, if you want to hear it, it was actually hand-built by Grover Jackson, Mike Shannon, and two other original guys who were the original manufacturers of Charvel guitars in the late 70s. This is when, like, Eddie Van Halen, his first guitar, the famous one.
Yeah.
That guitar and Randy Rhoads guitars from Ozzy. They were the guys who made it. So Charvel decided in 2007 to bring that team of luthiers back together, hand build a few of these guitars, and they were for sale for some outrageous price, like $18,000 per guitar. And what happened was they were so outrageously expensive, none of them sold. People just didn't have the money. So this guitar had sat in a warehouse in a case for probably about 8 years, something like that, non-played. And so Mike kept saying, "You've got to come down and check this guitar out." And he sent me pictures of it, like text pictures, and I'm like, "I'm not playing that. The thing looks stupid. It looks like someone, poured blood all over it or whatever." Like, not a chance. So finally he kept calling me, and one day I said, "All right, fine." So I went down to the Charvel shop, where all the, artists go for all our guitars. So I went down there. He brings the guitar out, and as soon as I picked it up, I fell in love with it. It plays, it plays for you. It's so amazing. I mean, it's so easy to shred on the guitar, and it sounds magical. So as soon as I plugged it into the amp, I was like, "That's it. It's coming home." And so I walked out with the guitar, and it's been like, my main guitar now for about 3 years.
And just taking a quick sidetrack, but at this point, how big is your guitar collection? I mean, you just mentioned that you have guitars everywhere in your house, but how big is it? Have you counted them, or? Well,
yes. I mean, I'll be honest. I don't. I got to be careful when I talk like that. I probably have, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 guitars. And the reason that's the number, for me personally, I've had many, many guitars in the past that I never played, that sat in closet collecting dust, right? Just taking up room. So the guitars I have are all amazing guitars. 1958 Les Paul, the last of the four belt, late 60s Strats, vintage Charvel guitars. Every guitar I have plays really well, extremely well, and sounds really good. So really, that's what I do. I mean, I'll add another guitar here and there, but it has to play really well and it has to sound great. I don't want guitars because someone's giving me free guitars. I don't care about that. For me, it's got to be something that I can use. It's a tool, the way I express myself.
Because I remember on Venom, I think you used a vintage Les Paul guitar, right? It's not a shredding guitar by any means that you'd go for when you think of Malmsteen or yourself or Eddie Van Halen, right?
Well, I did. It's true. I used a 1958 Gibson Les Paul on a lot of the Venom record, along with the Charvel, a vintage Charvel that I got from the custom shop.
Yeah.
So those were like the two primary guitars that I used on Venom. And, people don't realize, Les Pauls absolutely are a shredding guitar. See, most people think, when they think of shred, especially people like my age or a little bit younger, immediately think of guys like Yngwie or me or Paul Gilbert or guys like that.
Yeah.
But the reality is, we're not the original guys that do this by any means. The original guitar players to do shred were guys like John McLaughlin, Al Di Meola, Paco de Lucia. Well, Al Di Meola, who's definitely the forefather of all of this speed kind of playing, he always played Gibson Les Pauls. Always. That was his main guitar, which people don't realize. So the Les Paul is actually a lot easier to shred on than a Strat. Strat can actually be quite resistant.
Oh, cool. So going back to Nature of the Beast, how did John Deddy and Phil T split the drumming duties on the album?
Good question. Okay, so John Deddy did the majority of the entire record. Phil T basically did a couple parts here and there, songs like Wonder World, that's where basically we had stuff where we were bringing him in to like complete parts or reorchestrate parts on the drums, change arrangements, things like that. But the brunt of it really is John. And the same thing with Venom. I think John actually, everything was done by John on Venom.
Okay.
And he did a great job. I mean, he's an amazing player, but there's a misnomer. John is not in our band. John has played with us on and off. He's been more of a side guy, right? So we also, the tour last time we did, John did the beginning of the tour, and then Patrick Johansson actually came in and did the rest of the tour with us, who's an amazing drummer as well.
Oh, okay. Well, John is a very much on-demand player, right? He played on Slayer for a bit. He played on Anthrax for a bit. So he keeps himself busy for sure.
Yeah, he's a great player. He's really good. Him and I, we butt heads a little bit because we're both we have the alpha personality, But yeah, I respect him. Fantastic drummer. Really enjoy him. Look, Impellitteri had some amazing drummers. Before John Deddy, the last 4 records and tours for over 10 years was my drummer Glenn Sobel, who's now playing in a band called Hollywood Vampires with the actor Johnny Depp and Joe Perry of Aerosmith, and he also plays with Alice Cooper.
Yeah.
And before that, I had Ken Mary, who was Alice Cooper's drummer, and then before that, I think it was Pat Torpey, another insane drummer. Unfortunately, we lost Pat, but so I've always had amazing drummers play in the band.
Mm-hmm. And how would you compare working with Rob Rock versus Graham Bonnet? And why do you think there's so much conflict between guitar players and singers in so many bands?
Well, it's probably visionary. Now Rob and I kind of grew up together playing in the bars. We grew up in an area in New England, outside of New York City. So we had to play like theaters and nightclubs. You had to play cover songs. So we would play stuff by like Queen, Chicago, early Ozzy, Van Halen, stuff like that. Plus then we throw in our own original music. Why Rob and I work really well together is we're really developing as musicians and artists together. And we were kind of using the same material as source or inspiration, right? The artists that were influencing us. So it's very similar. So when we write together, we draw from kind of similar influences, and it works really well. We just have a really good chemistry. It really is very magical. I know that's a very strange word to use, but it is really that simple. It is very magical. With Graham, it was always different. With Rob, we did the very first Impellitteri record, which is called the Impellitteri Black EP. And it was the Black EP years before Metallica ever did a black record, right? So we had songs like Lost in the Rain, Burning. These songs cemented the sound of Impellitteri. And it was just fantastic. We were on fire, playing great, singing great, and everybody around the world, at least in the metal community, really started to really like us. And then Rob quit, which was all of a sudden, it's like, oh my gosh, everybody's paying attention to us, Kerrang! Magazine, guitar magazines, the media. And I had signed a record deal with Sony and Relativity Records, and I had a record to deliver. And I didn't know what to do. So I called Graham and said, hey, would you be interested in doing this? And he was like, absolutely. But the problem was I couldn't write speed metal for Graham, for his voice. So I was kind of in a predicament. It's like, okay, great. I lost Rob. I have established the sound, which I've always thought Impellitteri is kind of like Iron Maiden blent with Judas Priest and Al Di Meola and Vivaldi on steroids. Kind of like a mixture of all of them. That's kind of what I've always kind of viewed our band as. Maybe with Queen with the big vocals too, as well.
Yeah.
So, but with Graham, it's more blues-based and European kind of sounding, right? From bands like Rainbow and, all the famous stuff he was in. So someone suggested, exactly. So someone really said to me, and again, it was difficult because I'm going out of what I really love, deviating. So someone said, look, why don't you do music more based around what Graham was known for? And that was challenging because all of a sudden I wasn't doing what I wanted to do or who I was. Now I'm doing something that was a little uncomfortable. However, having said that, I am extremely grateful we recorded and released the song Stand in Line. It has been globally, around the world, no matter where we play that song live and people go crazy. They go nuts over it. And on that record, it was difficult mainly because Graham won. He was different from what I was used to working with. He's also 18 years older than me. As a matter of fact, everybody on the Stand in Line record, all great musicians, fantastic, but they were all a lot older than me. So emotionally, it was difficult for me to relate to these guys because I felt like a child around everybody.
Understood.
Yeah, anyway, so that was the issue with Stand in Line versus, Graham and Rob. But I will say this. In the year 2000, Rob and I did a record called Crunch. And after we got done with the tour, Rob said, hey, you want to go do a couple solo records? So at that point, I'm thinking, well, if you do a solo record, what do I do and what do I call it? So hence, I ended up doing a record called System X. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to try this one more time. But this time, I'm going to bring Graham back in. But I'm going to do Impellitteri music my way, the way the band really writes music, right? The speed, thrashy kind of stuff. But Graham's going to sing his way, and we're going to see if these two worlds will collide and make something magical. And so we did a record called System X, which got released only in Europe and Japan. But in those countries, people loved it. It was really cool. And I look back now, and I really dig that record. As a matter of fact, I kind of feel in many ways that's what Stand in Line should have been, in my person. So, and that's kind of the difference between, like the Rob and the Graham and why we did, the changes.
Yeah, understood. And you also had producer Mike Plotnikoff at the helm this time, who's worked with Van Halen, Aerosmith, In Flames. How much of an influence did he have on the final product?
Well, Mike actually really did the engineering, like on the basics, the drum tracks, all of that stuff. And Mike did a great job. I mean, Mike is legendary. I mean, he's obviously produced Van Halen, Aerosmith, he's done AC/DC.
Yeah.
So he's done some very legendary bands. And he came in, and one thing I learned about him is he works fast, I mean, he basically, got the drum sound up in a matter of hours, and we're up and running, that quick. Where other times it could take 3 days to get the kick drum sound, so
Jesus.
He was much faster. And it was a pleasure to work with him. He's a good guy.
All right, cool. And you must get that question a lot, but when you started, what made you call the band Impellitteri? Because I think a lot of people kind of think you're a solo artist like Vai, Satriani, Malmsteen, but Impellitteri seems to be very much a collaborative unit, right?
Absolutely. I'm glad you said that. Impellitteri has always been a band and always will be a band. We have I've never been a solo artist, ever, nor do I want to. For me, I'm just one of the members in the band, no more important than the other guys. The other guys are equally as important as I am. It started off really in the beginning where we had done the Impellitteri Black EP music. We were starting to format it. And in Los Angeles at that time, you get players in the band that were starstruck. So as soon as you get a great player, you start working with them and you'd be rehearsing. And then some big band would lose one of their members and then, they would basically come calling for these guys. And these guys immediately would jump because they thought, oh, success is easy this way. And so I didn't want to have a band name where we'd have to, if we lost people, we'd have to get in legal battles where all of a sudden, oh my gosh, now we're fighting over the name.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and that's honest. And a friend of mine said, dude, why don't you call it Impellitteri? At first I was against it. I was like, dude, I can't even pronounce the name. And it's like, it's hard to spell, it's hard to pronounce. It's like, that's stupid. But no, someone said, dude, you got to do this. And I said, obviously growing up as a little kid, I was a huge fan of Van Halen and bands like that. And I went, all right, at least it solves the problem. If people leave, I don't have to worry about it legally because they can't take the name. So that's really how that began. And then obviously it stuck. And it's definitely, if you see the letters, I think you kind of know what it is, whether you can say it or not.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And another thing I'm curious about, when you started your recording career, there was a lot of competition with other guitar players like Vai, Satriani, and the Shrapnel Records guys like Paul Gilbert, Tony McAlpine, etc. Would you say that the thing that was most prominent at the time was the competition or the camaraderie between you guys?
Well, first let me say this. I love all those players that you mentioned. We're all different. We all have our own voice for the most part. There was a lot of competition because obviously you want to be as good, if not better, than the other guy. And, when we started playing at the level we're all playing, it takes a lot of work and a lot of discipline. So that was a good part. But there were things I hated about it. I hated the fact that all of a sudden you're more concerned about your technique than composing something that's magical. When I was a little kid, bands like Van Halen, Randy Rhoads with the early Ozzy, solo records. Yeah. There was no competition like that. It was very friendly. It was like I don't think people got worried and worked up when they played before people because, in the 80s it got to the point where it's stupid. You have a bunch of guitar players standing in front of you with their arms crossed, all trying to think they can do it better. And that's not what music's about. Yeah. So what really saved me is realizing, you know what? No, I am me. I'm going to do this my way. If you like it, great. If you don't, I don't care. So I'm going to express myself my way. And so I just started playing, and I all of a sudden started playing like a beast, a monster, because I was playing from my heart. I didn't really care about, you know, how the other guys played, if they liked me or not. I played to please myself. And that was a big change for me. You know, especially when I did the Impellitteri Black EP, you can hear it. My first song we ever recorded, Lost in the Rain. You know, that's crazy shredding, but it's also very sincere and honest and from my soul. So, you know, I've always looked at it like, you know, the competition thing, those other guitar players shouldn't be concerned with, you know, if I can play faster than them or if they can't play as fast as me. That's destructive. You shouldn't think that way. You should think about how you can create your own brand, your own sound. Yeah. So that's kind of, you know, there were good times and bad times. The camaraderie, you know, the things, it wasn't really, I wouldn't say there's a lot of camaraderie because I really didn't know any of those guys. I mean, we all knew each other, but I wasn't friends with them. So it wasn't like, you know, we'd sit down together in a room and play.
Okay, I see. And what was the turning point for you growing up? When did you realize that you could be a professional musician and make a living out of music?
Well, you know, my story is a little different than most people. I think a lot of people have heard it on the internet, and not to, you know, bring in the drama music all of a sudden, but, you know, I started guitar at 12 years old, and my parents died when I was 9 years old, so I was kind of an orphan, and my grandparents raised me, and thank God my grandparents were very young. So my grandmother knew I had to do something because losing your parents at 9, she thought something would, you know, happen to me emotionally bad. So she really, she kind of inspired me, and so she brought me to a music store, and I'll never forget. I went into this guitar store called Mundell's Music, and on the wall was a copy of a Les Paul and a copy of a Stratocaster. And she said, choose one, and then you're going to take lessons. So I choose the Les Paul. It was this amazing black Les Paul copy. I mean, when I say amazing, it was very hard to play. The strings were like an inch off the fingerboard. But I took it, and I immediately started taking lessons. And I fell in love with the guitar, and I became obsessed. And all of a sudden, I would play 8 to 10 hours a day. As a matter of fact, a lot of times I wouldn't even go to school because all I wanted to do was play my guitar all day. And that was kind of the beginning of when I realized this is what I want to do with my life. And, you know, it wasn't until years later, I think it was 15 years old, I started playing in the nightclubs where they would sneak me in. And a lot of people would say, oh, my God, you're a really good guitar player. And so all of a sudden, you know, people started to really appreciate my ability. And I was kind of like, really? Do I really have something? This is true. This is great because I love doing this. And that's kind of how the evolution began. And then inevitably, you know, I started doing my own thing, and then I got signed by the big record companies. And, you know, all of a sudden, before I know it, I'm 22 or 23 years old, and I'm on MTV, which at the time was one of the biggest TV shows in the world, especially in the United States. Yeah. You know, so.
Banger's Ball and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, it was once you get to that point, you're like, yeah, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life.
I see. Yeah. And going back to Nature of the Beast, I'd say you're in a hot streak when it comes to album covers as well, because the one for Wicked Maiden was great. Venom was amazing with that painting there. And the one for the new album has a lot of grit. But what kind of input did you give the artist of the cover, and how much involved are you usually with those covers?
I gave the artist 100% input. It was my vision.
Okay.
I mean, so if you listen to Nature of the Beast, I got to be careful how I frame this because I don't want people to think it's a ripoff of Iron Maiden, but there are definitely elements to this in all truthfulness. I'll tell you, the Nature of the Beast, we almost didn't use that as the title because obviously Iron Maiden has the number of the beast, right? But believe it or not, it has nothing to do with that. The Nature of the Beast really is about, you know, if you play with fire, you're bound to get burned. If you play with a snake, you're bound to get bitten. Right? So that it's just the nature of the beast. It's the same thing when you look at, you know, someone like President Trump. What do you expect? I mean, you kind of already knew how he was going to behave. And I'm not saying anything negative or positive for him. I'm just saying, you know, when you kind of look at the political people that you put in office, look at their past actions and their behavior, do you expect anything different in the future? So it's the nature of their beast. That's where the title really came from. And then when we were doing the cover, I kind of thought about this music, when I was listening to what we had recorded and accomplished, I was like, man, this reminds me of when I was a kid, 1981, listening to Iron Maiden and Judas Priest and early Ozzy, just all the crazy stuff. It has this energy and this vibe. And I said, man, we need a cover that's going to bring everybody back into that time. And so that's where we put the beast in the graveyard. We killed ourselves. Our names are on the tombstones. We're all dead.
Yeah, I noticed that.
It was so much fun. Yeah, it was really fun. you know, and I don't know. I mean, we're getting a lot of vibes. We're going to be doing T-shirts pretty soon for the record cover. I really like it. I think it's a very powerful image.
Yeah, it is. It is cool. And at this stage, are you already planning how the live show is going to be for the tour? And when can we start hearing about the tour dates for the album?
Yeah, well, we're looking at dates right now. I mean, we always tour Japan, Europe, those places. So right now, we're working on all of that. We're trying to figure out where we're going to play. And to be honest, every country that invites us, if the concert promoters invite us and they're decent venues, I promise we'll come this time and we're going to play. So, but I will say this, it's also up to the concert promoters to invite us, because without the invitation, we can't come play for you guys.
Yeah.
You know, the promoters have the full power because they control the venues and the promotion, all of that. But if they invite us, we'll come. So if your fans, these people know the promoters, give them our name. We'll be glad to come.
I'll make sure I do that, man, here in Toronto. I hope you guys can play here.
Well, you know, I would love to, man. I think it would be awesome to play up there.
Yeah. Well, to finish off, let's pick a song to end this interview from the new album.
Well, let me see. So why don't we just try Phantom of the Opera?
Cool. Let's finish off with that one. So, Chris, thank you so much for your time, man, and all the best with the new release and the new tour.
Great, man. Thank you so much for your time.
Cheers, man. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. Folks, I hope you enjoyed our talk with Chris Impellitteri, and now we have a chance to talk to the singer of his band, Mr. Rob Rock. Rob, great talking to you, man. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. Good day.
Yeah, great talking to you. And it must be an exciting time for you with the new album, Nature of the Beast, coming out soon, right?
Yeah. I'm always excited when a new record comes out. You know, I'm curious to see what people think of it, you know?
Yeah, well, there's been nothing but good reviews so far from what I saw. So I'm looking forward to it very much. And what can you tell us about the writing and recording of the album?
Let's see. Well, Chris gave me a call and said, JVC and Frontiers both want a new album, and you want to do another album? I said, yeah, let's do it. So he basically sent me some demos that he was working on, and we just started corresponding that way because he's in California and I'm in Florida. So the initial part of the songwriting began that way. And then once we decided which songs that we were going to use, the band started rehearsing in Los Angeles. So.
Okay, and how much of an input did you have on the lyrics and melodies this time?
Pretty much the same as always, you know. Quite a bit, yeah. Quite a bit.
Yeah. Well,
yeah, Chris just kind of leaves that up to me. We go back and forth with titles and ideas and stuff like that, and you know, directions of the song. And we basically, he has some ideas when he's recording the songs. And then I have ideas, of course, when I hear it from a vocal perspective. And we just kind of discuss it and decide which we think is best for the song. And then I just take it from there. I take whatever we have for melody or title, and I just run with it, you know?
Yeah. And what I found interesting is that it works like one of those old TV series we grew up with, The Twilight Zone, Tales from the Crypt. So the album works more like a correct collection of horror stories, and each song tells a different one, right?
Yeah. I guess so. They're horror stories.
Yeah, well, the first song that caught my attention was the cover of Phantom of the Opera, where you do both the male and female voices. Was it easy for you to come up with that arrangement, and how are you planning to do this song live?
Well, I'll tell you, when I first heard that demo, Chris said, I got a cover song I demoed up. It's kind of strange, he said. It's nothing really like the original. And when I heard it, I kind of just, I just said to myself, what the heck is this? It has nothing to do with the original in my mind. It was like a speed metal version of Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
And I just thought to myself, wow, it's so Impellitteri that we got to do it. You know, we'll just do it and see what happens. And then, of course, we ran into the problem. Chris was like, well, what are you going to do about the girl part? And I said, I don't know. Are we getting a girl to sing it? He goes, no, you sing it. I said, okay, now you want me to be a boy and a girl. So anyway, what I did was I took the lyrics that denoted the male or female and changed those. And then when it came to the second and fourth verse, I didn't want to sing it the same way as the original, because I've already did that in the first verse. in the third verse. So I was thinking maybe if I switched up the verses, it'd be more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I basically, when it came to the second verse, I said, how would I sing it if I was writing it? How would I just, if I had these words, how would I ad-lib it, but still stay within the melody, sort of, you know?
Uh-huh.
And so I performed that at home. I recorded the demo of that, and Chris loved it. So he said, "Oh yeah, well now just do the last verse the same kind of way, and you know, just wing it, man. Do it, make it rock."
Uh-huh.
And that's what we ended up doing it, and we both liked it a lot. So that's what we did.
Yeah. Well, the impression I had was that it would be very difficult to duplicate live, but Chris seems comfortable with it. I spoke with him the other day and interviewed him, you know, after I got the album, and he said, "No, it should be easy."
Yeah, I don't think it'd be too bad. I mean, you always have. Whenever I do a lot of harmonies with myself on the record.
Mm-hmm.
And live, sometimes James and Chris can sing it, sometimes they can't. You know, and if they can't, I just sing it myself, and we just say, "Hey, man, it's live. Let's give it to them live." You know, live and real. So that's what we do.
Yeah. And the first video you did was for the song "Run for Your Life," which at least to me has an old school vibe to it in the video itself, with just the band playing on stage and no gimmicks or anything like that. Was that the intention with the video or not?
Yeah, we just wanted to do a live performance take of it.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, we discussed trying to have people put together all kinds of visuals and filming it and all that. But we just said, man, it's just rock and roll it, you know? So we just kind of went for it that way.
Yeah, it has an old school vibe for me, definitely, which I like. So props to you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just, you know, doing it the way you learned it, you know? Like when we were influenced by that stuff, so we decided, let's just do that, you know? We love it, so.
Yeah, sure. And one of my favorite songs on the album, particularly on the vocal department, is Do You Think I'm Mad? Where I think you play with the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story a little bit, right?
Right, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I really like, that's probably my favorite song vocally, I think.
Uh-huh.
Just because the story, you know, I basically took the whole idea of that movie in the book and just kind of tried to weave it into a story that fit in the song, you know. Mm-hmm. And I just think between the lyric melody and the lyrics, and then all the added backing vocal parts in there, it really became a project for me.
Uh-huh.
And in the end, I really like that song a lot.
Yeah.
I know it's different. I know it's a little different than our regular stuff, but that's probably why I like it too.
Yeah, and well, you were with the band on the first ever album, and then went back and forth and decided to pursue other endeavors. But Nature of the Beast is now the third album in a row with you on vocals. I guess you're back for good, right? Or
yeah, I think that's just the way it is now. I mean, me and Chris work so well together naturally that it seems like a no-brainer just to keep going.
And if you allow me, let's talk for a while about your work outside of Impellitteri. You also sang on a band called Driver with Roy Z, who produced a lot of the Bruce Dickinson solo albums, right? What was that like, and if there's any plans to continue with the collaboration?
Well, yeah. Well, me and Roy are really good friends. We've been friends for a long time, probably since, let's see, what's that, 1990 or 80s? No, it was actually, I think it was 88 when I first met Roy. So back in the 80s when I was out in Los Angeles, we got together and came up with a Driver version that we had there. And he was unknown at that time. He was just an LA guitar player from the Valley, you know. But the bass player, I had just left Joshua with the bass player, and he knew of Roy Z, and that's how I met Roy. So we started writing songs, man. We wrote probably 30 or 40 songs that summer together. That's all we did was write songs and rehearse. And from those songs came a lot of songs for my solo albums, the Rob Rock solo albums, and also the Driver record albums that we did. So we ended up doing like 6 albums, 4 of the solo albums and 2 Driver records with Roy Z. So we've got a lot of history of writing, and we work very well together. And he's very he's different than an Impellitteri production. Chris is a lot more micromanaged and focused on making the on the presentation, where Roy Z is much more freelance and more like, give me some soul, give me some rawness, give me some, just be free. You don't have any boundaries, just do what you do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so it's a whole nother approach. And I've learned to bring the Roy Z approach into my Impellitteri recordings as well. And I think that helped us grow and mature as an Impellitteri band as well.
Oh, that's good to hear, man. And you touched on your solo career a little bit. You also have 4 studio albums and a live one. What are the current plans for your solo material?
Well, I really get a lot of requests to do another solo record, so I'm hoping that I can put one together for 2019. But first, my priority now is Impellitteri and to play as many live shows as we can early next year. So, But in the meantime, I am writing songs and gathering ideas for that.
Oh, cool. And you must get that question a lot. But do you still get confused with Bob Rock, the producer, and Bobby Rock, the drummer?
I'm not confused at all. Some other people, they always like to mention that. Oh, it's Bob Rock producer, Bobby Rock drummer, or Rob Rock singer. But I've always been Rob Rock since I was a child. In my family, we adopted a boy, and his name was Robert Cashin. And so when I was 2 years old, they started calling me Rob and started calling him Bob because we both had the same first name. So I became Rob and he became Bob, and it's been Rob ever since. So, and the other question is I get a lot, is that your real name? And it is my real name, yes.
And when was it that you realized you could sing and would pursue a career in the music business? And were your parents supportive at the time or not?
Yeah, I had very supportive parents. My parents always pushed my family to pursue music. My dad played guitar. My mom played piano. My older brother, he started out on guitar. And I grew up listening to his band rehearse in the cellar when we lived up in Massachusetts. And I would always watch the drummer. For some reason, I was attracted to the drums. And so I started drumming at around 14, 15 years old. And I wanted to be in my brother's band really bad. And at the age of 16, their drummer was leaving, and I was like, I want to be your drummer. I want to be your drummer. He says, well, you're going to have to sing if you want to be in this band. Because they were doing a lot of Beatles, a lot of harmony stuff. And so I started learning all the backing vocals to all the songs they were playing. And eventually I got in the band, and eventually I had to sing a lead song in there. So they kind of forced me to pursue singing while I was drumming. From there, after that band dissolved, I started getting more into heavy metal and stuff and playing in the clubs back east. I was singing backing vocals in a band that did a lot of harmonies, like Journey, Styx, Boston, Kansas, songs like that. And that's where I really learned, I think, to sing a lot. And then I think it was 1983, the band had a band meeting, and I was like, oh, what's going on? I didn't know what was going on, but they all sat around and said, we've decided that we want you to go out front and be our lead singer because you sing so good. And we'll get another drummer. And we already have another drummer lined up, so you need to do this. And so with their confidence and with their support, I became the lead singer back then. And I never really looked back since then.
Oh, cool. It's kind of unusual because I've never heard of anyone being pushed into becoming a lead singer. Oh, it's always the other case, the other way around. I want to be in the forefront. I want to be the singer and whatnot, right?
I'm naturally a shy person, though. So it would take that to get me out front. It would take people to ask me to do it and say, no, you can do it. You can do it. But somehow it lined up. I needed that confidence from other people to force me to go out front and have the balls to do it, I think. So.
And after so many years, what have you done throughout the years to preserve your voice? Because you're still able to reach incredibly high notes, right? So, and that's not always the case with other singers.
Yeah, it's just, I think it's personal lifestyle. I'm not a drinker. I'm not a smoker. My wife calls me a germaphobe. And whenever anyone's sick around me, I kind of run the other way. It's just, it's a matter of I think prioritizing your health, you know. And I think the hardest part about keeping your voice in shape, especially when you're touring, is the travel. You know, when you're not sleeping good, you're flying on planes all the time, and doing so much stuff in between. That's where it's really the most difficult for me to stay in good shape, you know.
In and out of air conditioning doesn't help either, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
And how important is it to like keep in shape for your voice to come out well?
I think it's very important, and I think what you eat kind of probably has an effect. I'm not a doctor; I don't know the actual effect of it, but I think I just tend to try to stay within a certain weight zone. I go up and down, but when I see myself bloating out and getting heavy, I stop and pay attention to what I'm eating and stuff like that. But so I think it's a lifestyle. It has to be a lifestyle and a conscious effort to stay in shape physically and vocally. Because when you're singing songs of that intensity and range, it really takes all your body to get there. It takes all your core energy. So it's important. You know, like I said, sleep is like the number one important. You know?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. And do you find that being a Christian has limited any kind of opportunity for you in your career or not?
I don't know. I think I would imagine that it has in some way, but it hasn't been confronted to my faith, you know? I haven't said, oh, no, we don't want you because you're a Christian. I haven't had that. But for me, I think following my faith is more important than anything. So I'm okay with it. You know, I'm okay if I've been rejected by that. But I've been blessed at the same time to record probably over 30 albums in my life. It's still going. It's still going strong. So it's been a blessing for me.
Okay. And so let's talk about the Nature of the Beast a little bit more. You have also a cover of Symphony of the Universe, which is, you know, a complete opposite from the original as well, right?
Yeah. That is really, I mean, I was not aware of that song very much. I probably heard it in passing somewhere in my life. But when Chris said Symphony of the Universe, I was like, well, what song is that? Because I didn't click in my head. Then when I heard the monster riff, I go, oh, that song.
Yeah.
But in my mind, I thought that song trailed off originally into some kind of bluesy type area. It kind of got slow and psychedelic and stuff. But when Chris played me the demo he was working on, he had that opening riff on the guitar that's over the monster riff, and he was like, should I leave that in there? I said, yeah, man, that makes it Impellitteri. Without that, it's just a heavy riff. So he added that riff, and once he did that, I realized it was going to be an Impellitteri song, and then he never really took it into that psychedelic area. He kind of went off and did his own thing come the solo section. So I think the song is very strong, and I like it.
Yeah, well, it's pedal to the metal, just to quote another Impellitteri album title. Anyway.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, definitely.
It definitely is, yeah. So at this point, are you already rehearsing for the tour or not?
Right now, Chris is contacting promoters, and we're trying to get some dates together. So individually, we keep playing and keep singing, but we haven't gotten together yet as a band to actually tour.
Okay.
But that is coming up soon. Once we get some dates, then we'll put together the set list and start focusing more on that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, at which point, you know, during the album and tour cycle, do you guys sit together and decide on a set list?
I think once we have some definite offers for dates, and we know that, okay, in 2 or 3 months we're going to be on the road, and that's when we get together and say, okay, let's really focus on this. What songs do we want to do this time, and you know, what order of songs, and how's it going to play out?
Yeah. Okay. So I guess after it's released, and I think it comes out on October 12th, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So
it came out in Japan on the 3rd, and then it comes out U.S. and Europe on the 12th.
Oh, okay. So after it's released, I guess give it a couple of weeks, and we start hearing about the tour dates, at least I hope so.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah. So I asked.
Yeah, I think everybody just waits to see what kind of reaction it gets, and and how people respond, and then things start to happen after that.
Well, it'll be positive for sure, man, because this album is a traditional Impellitteri sound. So make no mistake, it's gonna be a good reaction, or at least I hope so.
Oh, great!
Yeah.
Great.
And at this point, I want to thank you for your time, man, and all the best with the new release and the new tour.
All right. Well, thank you, and thank you very much for the interview.
Cheers, man. Take care.
Okay, cheers. Have a good night.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
That's it, guys. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed this double feature of Chris Impellitteri and Rob Rock. Please remember to subscribe to our podcast in order to get notified of all our interviews, as well as our Talking Perspectives podcast. Make sure you like us on Facebook and Twitter, and check us out on www.sonicperspectives.com. We'll leave you with the cover of Phantom of the Opera from Impellitteri's new album, Nature of the Beast. Take care, and rock on!